Welcome you all to the concluding event of International Women's Day celebration in CDRI. We all know that March 8th is celebrated throughout the globe honoring women, and CSIR-CDRI is also celebrating the International Women's Day by organizing various events. In the first two events, we all participated in the candlelight march and enjoyed watching the movie titled Hidden Figures. Today, we are concluding it with a theme discussing the struggle of women for equity. So, to begin with, let us watch a documentary compiling the thoughts of CDRI family members on feminism.
My first question is, what do you think about feminism?
If you talk of ism, I'm strictly against this ism. किसी भी ism की जरूरत तब पड़ती है जब आपको ऐसा लग रहा होता है कि कोई अंडर प्लेड है, एक वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट दिखाई देता है अगर हम किसी चीज़ को प्रमोट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. हमारे शहरों में जो एक परिवार की बात करते हैं, परिवारों में दुर्भाग्य से कह लीजिए या सौभाग्य से कह लीजिए, मेरे परिवार में कोई अदर देन मेरी माँ कोई फीमेल है नहीं, और मुझे अपने परिवार में कहीं नहीं दिखाई देता. Despite of being she alone, she captures, like she runs the whole show.
See, I believe feminism is more about choices. Like people say, doing certain thing and not doing certain thing is feminism. I believe the choice of doing a thing or not to do a thing is feminism.
मेरा मानना ये है कि जो खासकर वर्ड है फेमिनिज्म, इस तरह के वर्ड्स जो हैं ये पाश्चात्य संस्कृति की देन है, पीछे से उधर से लाके और अननेसेसरी की समाज, जो कि इस तरह के खासकर हमारा भारत का जो समाज है, जहाँ नारी पूजी जाती है वहाँ देवताओं का वास होता है, तो नारीत्व को लेके तो कभी कोई कंफ्यूजन रहा ही नहीं.
और महिलाएं हैं, महिलाओं को सपोर्ट करना चाहिए. कहीं हॉस्पिटल है या रेलवे है या बस है कहीं जिसे महिलाएं जाती हैं, सीट नहीं मिलती तो पुरुषों को उठकर उनका सम्मान में सीट देनी चाहिए. महिलाओं को तो सबसे पहले वो करना चाहिए.
Also a part which doesn't understand that okay, women are also human beings, so for that part it is still needed. But as far as I understand that when it comes to me as a person, as a look, like for me, just for me, I believe that it was not really necessary for me, because in my household, thankfully, everything was always neutral. So I did not really need extra support or anything, because I was not lacking anywhere.
नारीवाद जैसे लोग बहुत प्रकार की ऑब्जेक्शन करते हैं कि नहीं, लड़कियों को नहीं करना चाहिए, जैसे शिक्षा को लेकर के या उनको नौकरी से लेकर के, तो इस पे ऑब्जेक्शन जो करते हैं मुझे लगता है कि नहीं करना चाहिए, क्योंकि आने वाले समय में लड़कियां भी कुछ आगे विकास कर सकती हैं. तो इस पे जो लोग ऑब्जेक्शन करते हैं नहीं करना चाहिए.
तो जो है महिलाओं को पुरुषों बराबर अधिकार देने चाहिए.
ओके, बराबरी के हर क्षेत्र में बराबर के अधिकार देने चाहिए. किसके बराबर? पुरुषों के बराबर है, मतलब
जैसे शिक्षा में है और बाकी ऑफिसों में है और हर जगह क्षेत्र में देने चाहिए.
So, ma'am, are you a feminist?
I'm not a feminist.
Why so?
Because I believe that we give unnecessary importance to this particular word. I believe that men and women are both equal. As far as I am concerned, I was given equal opportunities by my parents, and I don't believe in this word because I have never seen such difference as such.
Yeah, means I support my wife has been working for ages and I support her always, so we have been doing that. And my mother was like that, no, both my sons should know all the household work, like, so I've never like shied away from doing household work. I always support my wife also.
No, actually the feminism nowadays, I'm not telling that every 100% of women are taking the feminism as, now they have generalized the feminism as that women are only superior. This is not the way, but feminism should be taken as upliftment of the women. As we know that in rural areas of India, women are suppressed nowadays also, but there should be upliftment of women all together, whole country.
हाँ, सपोर्टर हूँ मैं, मतलब मैडम भी आ रही हैं।
ज्यादा लेवल पे या फिर थोड़ा मॉडरेट लेवल पे?
ज्यादा लेवल पे तो नहीं।
Me? Yeah. Feminist? How can it be possible?
Okay, so you're saying you're not a feminist?
I favor always feminism, but I'm not feminist.
Status of feminism in India. Should feminism be more widely practiced?
No, I believe CDRI as an institution is such a fine institution. Everybody is practicing like supporting women staff. I don't find there's a discrimination between males and females here particularly in this institute. Everybody is learned and everybody is supporting us. So I believe feminism is being practiced here.
अब उनके लिए फैसिलिटी जो है अलग पढ़ने के लिए फैसिलिटी और क्या होनी चाहिए और तो होनी।
मतलब आपको कोई कमी लगती है कि ये चीज यहाँ पे
ऐसा है कि यहाँ पे तो बराबर का CDRI में तो बराबर का ही दिखाई दे रहा है। हाँ, बराबर का दिखाई दे रहा है। वो चाहे कैंटीन हो या कहीं भी हो, सबको ऐसे ही है एक साथ।
Yes, I mean, why not? I mean, one has to understand that feminism, I mean, it's like liberating half the population of the world. I mean, half the population or less than half the population of the world. So yes, it should be practiced.
It should be more widely practiced, because irrespective of how much we speak that feminism is important and how much we think that feminism is widespread in today's society, still there are places and there are situations where women are undermined in all aspects.
I think it should be, but not in other way, like treating, so we have to take it parallel, like women and men should be treated equally, not more than, this balance should be equal.
Me, I have not noticed a single human being who has been disrespectful towards me as a woman or as a girl. Nobody has been disrespectful. Nobody has been, derogatory. Nobody has been oppressing or whatever. So I think we are quite fine here. Nobody is really oppressed that much. Nobody is being, I think everything is fine here. So yeah, so I think people are supporting feminism here, so that's why fine here.
Of course, there should be more advocacy, and see, we have more, I think, girl students than boy students. But yes, I still feel that girl students. I've been here for almost now 34 years, and I've seen a lot of girl students. Many of them have gone into jobs and are doing extremely good, and some are even CEOs of companies and abroad. But yes, at least this is, I would call, like 60-40. 60 may have gone, but 40 have gone back to homes and they are good with being housewives and things. So if somebody even if girls are studying so hard, reaching out, they should strive for getting more into jobs or having an independent career, or see, they may opt for different careers, like teaching is one, but patenting is there, and then there are editing processes which all those publishers want. So all those things are not to mistrend us, but yeah, if you are intelligent, you can do it very effectively and you can earn a lot from that. So yes, this will evolve, and this is evolving, and this will evolve.
I thank all the CDRI family members who participated in this documentary video for sharing their thoughts. And also I acknowledge Ravindranath and Qasim for their fine tuning. After watching the documentary, it was evident that some members of CDRI family understood and some had an unclear understanding of feminism. So to throw a light on it, we have Veena who will be addressing this with a presentation titled A Brief History of Women's Struggle for Equality. And Veena Amanathan is a DBT Wellcome Trust Fellow in the Division of Pharmacology working in the lab of Dr. Amit Lahiri. I welcome Veena.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Veena Amanathan, and today I will be giving a overview of women's struggle for equity. To begin with, let's see what is feminism. Feminism encompasses all the organized activity on behalf of women's interests and rights to achieve equality of sexes, be it in all political, racial, economical, or cultural context. The premise of feminism is to promote equality and justice, as well as provide them with equal access to resources that are otherwise available to men. We should remember that feminism is not anti-men, it is only anti-patriarchy. Feminism refutes the basic ideology that men are superior to women. Unlike the other ideologies like communism and capitalism, we cannot trace the origin of feminism to few canonical books, but we can say that the major feminist movements happened in waves or phases. At least the first two waves can be distinctively traced back to the liberal democratic movements that happened in Europe as an aftermath of French Revolution. So coming to the first wave of feminism, which came in the later half of the 19th century, the major defining feature of this wave, we can say, was to achieve women's suffrage, or what we call as the right to vote in elections. During the World War I, when men fought wars, the women took up men's job, but they were paid much lesser salaries compared to men. Only by widespread movements and demonstrations, they were able to acquire some amount of wage parity in many European countries. The other features of this wave include getting right for education, power to execute the wills, own and manage property, as well as to get custody of children. It might be coincidental, but at the same time in British India, the practice of sati, which involves immolation of Hindu women on the death of her husband, was also banned by persistent campaign against it by Ram Mohan Rai. And we can say that other eminent personalities also emerged at this time, like we have Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, then much later came Periyar, as well as Baba Saheb Ambedkar. All of them extended the initiative to expand education also to the women of India. Then the second wave, which emerged after the World War II, it expanded the movements of the first wave and also addressed issues like rape, issues related to rape, domestic violence, and workplace safety. This was the time when more and more women started joining the workforce instead of being confined only to the household, where they will be away from the lawmaking and politics. They also demanded reproductive rights, like such as having access to contraceptive methods, also right to abortion, so that they don't be treated like a baby-making machine. More on this will also be elaborated by the second speaker. And those who are interested can also read about this in this year's Nobel Laureate in Literature, Ms. Annie Ernaux's autobiographical novel titled as Happening. She has explained her experience of getting an abortion done in 1963, a time when abortion was illegal in France. So she has explained her quest to find a backstreet abortionist as days and weeks of her unwanted pregnancy passed by, but nobody would give her information on where to go. The same time also saw a campaign from National Women's Party in USA for the Equal Rights Amendment. So this amendment will declare equal rights or non-discrimination on the basis of sex in the US Constitution. At least as of 2021, we know 168 countries, including India, has added gender equality to their constitution, but still America has not approved this Equal Rights Amendment. Before we move on to the third wave, let's also discuss a bit about the ideological differences that started coming in this community, which gave rise to two branches of feminism, which is referred to as liberal feminism and the socialist feminism. So liberal feminists, they want to achieve equality by bringing political and legal reforms. They asked for changing the existing laws and attitude which is preventing equality. On the other hand, the socialist feminism, which is majorly supported by the working class women, they were opposing what is called the bourgeois democracy, which is highly influenced by the capitalist society. So they were arguing that we have to overthrow this capitalist order in order to liberate women from their current oppression. They were criticizing the liberal feminists that it is only concerned about uplifting few women, that to privileged women, to positions of power, while the major marginalization of women will still persist in the society. Another critique they were bringing is women's body and men's soul, how they were referring that liberal feminism has modeled women after men's image. Amidst these ideological differences came the third wave. So the third wave started in the 80s and the 90s of the last century, and it was highly inspired by the post-colonial literature and theory. This wave fought for the rights of all women of color who had suffered double servitude, first from the colonial rulers, second from the native male oppressors. Some refer to this wave as ethnofeminism or third world feminism, and clearly, like the previous two, this wave is not headed by white middle class women. So here, this wave we can also say is not like the radical feminism that is currently prevailing in the West, which is asking for complete elimination of male presence from political and economic sphere. What the third world feminists want is to have a dignified coexistence with the men of their community. These people also recognize that they have an existential threat arising from the racist and neoliberal capitalism, which they are fighting against this by partnering with the men of their community. We have seen this in case of Afro-American women movement as well as Dalit women movement in India. This, a plethora of groundbreaking studies have now come up on various topics like Islamic feminism, Dalit feminism, to mention a few. And this third world feminism has given rise to, we can say, a lot of publications of fancy theoretical works, which has also made its way into academia now, offered by many universities. In fact, I think this work has also inspired bookish people like Dr. Naibedya Chattopadhyay, who will otherwise not be aware of the realities of women's struggle. Moving on. Clearly, you can see that these waves and it has made some meaningful progress in the society. But still, we can argue that the fight against patriarchy is not over. Because, for instance, if we take our country, there are many hidden and invisible patriarchal features that is there in the society. If the plight of certain underprivileged women, we can say, their struggle begins even before she is born. So her first challenge is to be born and not get aborted. It is estimated that even now there is 4.6 lakhs sex-selective abortions that is happening per year in our country. So even after she is born, then she sometimes becomes the last priority in terms of getting education, food, or even the medical facilities. When she is growing up, she has to protect herself from the predatory eyes of pedophiles, as well as not fall a victim for human trafficking. Of all the crimes, those that are committed against women and children are having a very less conviction rate. In fact, many of the criminals are not even prosecuted. So after she grows, with very less support and encouragement for education, she many a times falls for a candidate for marriage. And when it comes to marriage, in terms of whom she's going to get married or when or how is not under her control. Being put in a strange or new family, she might get subjected to domestic violence, more notoriously if she fails to bear a male child. As she grows older and fragile, she becomes a burden to the family and gets even little food that she was previously getting, finally reduced to level of panhandling and die alone without anybody to claim. Clearly and fortunately, the women in this room, we have not faced these struggles, but we can understand that the common evil here is patriarchy. Their struggle or their plight is far worse than poverty. They are fighting for security and dignity, and also for one of the valued human quality, which is the hope. So from our privileged position, what can be the role? What can we play? So one of the things we can do is, from our socio-economic sphere, we can identify these invisible features of patriarchy and resist them. Essentially, we should debunk or debulk the moral and the philosophical basis of patriarchy. The key task in hand now is to grow our feminist community. We have to win more men on our side to support us, and the men with whom we will partner with should not be apologists of patriarchy, but someone who will unconditionally campaign for gender equality. We should also remember that we should win over the minds of certain fellow women who are acting as agents of patriarchy. Finally, the gender equality can only be achieved by serious and persistent discourse against every facet of patriarchy. Thank you.
Thank you, Veena. Now I invite Ms. Poonam Mehta, SRF in Dr. Rajendra Singh's lab in the Division of Endocrinology, to speak on the history behind the birth of the pill. Welcome, Poonam.
Hello everyone. So I am here to take you all to the history behind the discovery of the pill. So how significant this discovery was, you all can imagine. If today we have pill for everything. We have pill for nausea, pill for fever, pill for allergy, pill for everything. But if I simply say a pill, that means a contraceptive pill. So let's move forward to the pioneers. If I say Sanger, so does it ring any bell? Any familiarity with this name? Anyone? We are here for Women's Day, so Sanger is she here. So Margaret Sanger. She was born in the year 1879 in Corning, New York, and she was just a nurse by profession. Then what is so special about her? Is it no special that she was 6th of the 11 children born to her mother, Purcell, who also endured 7 miscarriages. So her mother, in 22 years of married life, conceived 18 times and died at an early age of 49 years. This sensitive child became the one who coined the term birth control, and she is also known as the mother of the pill. The most comprehensive book regarding the discovery of the pill came in the year 2014, which was almost after 54 years. So I would encourage you all to go through this book, where they have beautifully described that how the 4 pioneers, they came together for the discovery of the pill, and they reinvented sex and launched a revolution. So let's go through her journey. Sanger devoted her complete life for the discovery of the pill. She escaped the fate of her mother and started working as a nurse. So while working as a nurse, she has seen, just like her mother, many other women suffering. She, after looking at the women, because she was the one who take care of these women, so those who have undergone miscarriage, self-abortion, and abortion. So she has seen such women in a terrible state, and many a times it leads to their death as well. So she started writings regarding family planning, regarding birth control, because she was a nurse by profession. But at that time, the Comstock law was there in US. So Comstock law was a law of obscenity, and contraception was covered in that. So it was illegal to disseminate any kind of information in writing or verbally regarding contraception. And this comes under the violation of Comstock law. And even if these were written by the physician, so even doctors were not allowed to prescribe regarding contraception and birth control. She was the one who opened the first birth control clinic in the year 1916. She was distributing contraceptives, and just after 9 days, after opening this clinic, she got arrested again. And she did not stop. Even in the jail, she used to teach prisoner women regarding contraception, that how they can control, how they can plan their pregnancy, how they can control, have a control over birth. So finally, they gave her an offer that we will give you freedom if you will stop this thing or you will follow the law. So she completely stated that law is not for us, so I cannot respect it as it is existing today. So finally, she won her first battle in the year 1918 when the doctors were allowed to prescribe. She was also the one who founded American Birth Control League in the year 1921, which is now popularly known as Planned Parenthood Federation of America. By the year 1951, when Sanger was almost 72 years of age, she was attending a conference in Boston where she presented a need of having a pill. So it was not like the contraceptives were not available at that time. These condoms, diaphragms, so these were available. So she described the need that she is in a need of a pill by which women can regulate motherhood. She need not to depend upon men. She need not to depend upon any clinic for birth control. In that conference, Dr. Gregory Pincus, who was a dismissed professor from Harvard because of his initial experiments on in vitro fertilization, and he was openly talking about that in the media, and he was negatively portrayed. And because of that, he was not given the next tenure in Harvard, and he dismissed from that. So he then opened his private lab and continued his research there. During that, he met Sanger after that and told her what you are saying is actually possible. So no scientist initially agreed to the need of Sanger, which she was conveying to all the scientists because of the controversial research on contraception and because of the no funding available for such a research. So Dr. Gregory Pincus told her that he and his postdoc, MC Chang, has done some experiments in case of rabbit where they have seen that high dose of progesterone can stop ovulation. And we can extend these experiments to humans also. But we are in the need of fund to do more experiments. Then Sanger conveyed the need to her long-term friend, Catherine McCormick. So Catherine McCormick was a rich lady. She was a heir to her multimillionaire husband who died of congenital disease. Catherine McCormick and Sanger, how do they know each other? They were both involved in a suffragist movement. That was a movement regarding women's voting right. Catherine McCormick agreed to support Pincus' research, and she has contributed nearly $2 million for the discovery of the pill. Now, the Dr. Pincus, who has told the progesterone, then they involved Luis Miramontes, a Mexican chemist, who chemically synthesized progesterone and also he regulated the large-scale synthesis of progesterone. For now, the progesterone is chemically synthesized. Now they need human subjects to test a drug which they have synthesized. Because it was a contraceptive drug, so they cannot do it openly, so they involved Dr. John Rock, who was a gynecologist, and at the same time, he was a practicing Catholic. So he has two choices to make, that is to follow the church rules, and another was to be involved in such a research of contraception. So according to church, contraception is a grave sin. So he severed his ties with the church and agreed to do the contraceptive research. He initially included 50 human subjects from his clinic and did initial research on them as a fertility research. They did it openly like a contraceptive research. So they named it as a fertility research. And further, for involvement of large number of human subjects, they did the clinical trials in Puerto Rico, which is an outskirts of US. And finally, the drug got approved in the year 1957 as a menstrual regulator. And company smartly mentioned over the drug bottle that as a cautionary measure that it can cause contraception. And women were immensely taking it. And finally, after 3 years, then in 1960, they opened it up as a contraceptive. So this was their initial advertisement, which came in the year 1957 as a regulator of menstrual cycle. And after that, they opened it as a contraceptive drug in 1960, as it was sold as in the name of Innovid. And the advertisement which they have used for this contraceptive drug, so it has used many terms which were from the Sanger's passionate birth control plea, which she used during her campaigns regarding birth control. So it was unfettered from the beginning. Women has been a vassal to the temporal demands and frequently the aberrations of the cyclic mechanism of her reproductive system. Now, to a degree heretofore unknown, she is permitted normalization, enhancement, or suspension of cyclic functions and procreative potential. So this new medical control is symbolized in an illustration borrowed from ancient Greek mythology, that is Andromeda freed from her chains. If we compare the clinical trials which were carried at that time according to today's standards, so these clinical trials were scandalous. So they have just revealed single center. They did not reveal their second center, which appears to be the mental asylum. They did not take any informed consent from the subjects. The progesterone dose which was used was 10 times higher, which is now being sold in the market. Drug contained no mention of any adverse effects. Women were falling terribly sick after taking this drug, and many women sued GD Searle for adverse effects because no mentioning of adverse effects. And this also marked a new biological regime where FDA now started mentioning even if there is a minor side effect of any drug. These pioneers, they have seen the launch of the drug and the use of this contraceptive, but not for so long. Sanger died in the year 1966, and after a year, Dr. Pincus and Catherine died. At the same time, back home in India, through an act of parliament, anti-fertility research program was launched in CDRI for coming up with a safe contraceptive, and CDRI made a drug, Centroman, world's first non-hormonal contraceptive, which was included in the which was taken up by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and included in the National Family Planning Program in the year 2016, under which it is freely available in any public hospital. Dr. Rajesh Kumar Jha will take you through the journey of the discovery of this non-contraceptive pill. So I would like to extend my thanks.
Thank you, Poonam, for a wonderful and informative presentation. Now I hand over the dais to Mr. Muktada, JRF in Dr. Deepak Datta's lab in the Division of Cancer Biology for moderating a panel discussion.
So thank you so much, Karthik. Good morning, everyone. What an august gathering here. So as I was hearing Dr. Veena's talk, all I could think of was, shunned from her mother's womb, she cried for solace in the tomb. So definitely, Dr. Veena's talk took us all through the history of women's struggle, and Poonam described how the pill was discovered. The literature on women's struggle has grown so vast that now it is a specialty in different universities. So definitely in a very brief presentation, she could not cover a lot of aspects of women's struggles. Poonam, on the other hand, described a very captivating story of the pill. She mentioned about a Sanger, the less known Sanger, the Sanger with unparalleled grit and who dared to go the other way. Also, she described about a book which is written by Jonathan Egg, titled The Birth of the Pill. The book describes how a group of brave, rebellious people reinvented sex. So she has a soft copy of the book, and if anybody is interested to read her, she can take it from there. They can take it from there. So these two talks, they have piqued our great curiosity in learning more about these topics, which will be covered in today's panel discussion. So may I please have the opportunity to call upon the panelists for today's panel discussion on stage with us, Dr. Nilanjana Majumdar. Please give a great round of applause for all our panelists. Ms. Sakshi Yadav, Dr. Kashif Hanif, Ms. Shefali Tyagi, Ms. Rashmi Rathore, and Dr. Rajesh Jha. Ms. Shefali Tyagi, if she is here with us today. Moving on, so we have heard a very brief history of women's struggle, but we hardly know about the status of women in the prehistoric era, which encompasses more than 95% of the time of our species. Therefore, I invite Dr. Nilanjana to shed more light on it. Please, ma'am. Please give a great round of applause for Dr. Nilanjana.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be talking about the patriarchy or the male dominism. So first, if we ask the question to ourselves that is the male dominance is natural, and then the answer would be no. It is not natural, because to understand that, we'll have to look in the history. Approximately 10 to 12,000 years ago, when the human race was in the hunting and gathering phase of lifestyle, that time women were not subordinate to men. It was more recently, about 5,000 years ago, women subordination began when humans started the agriculture. Previously, women were the gatherer and provider of the staples, but as the farming and the agriculture started, it started becoming like more difficult for women, and they lost the control of crop production and the surplus. This surplus actually led to the formation of a more complex and eventually to the class society. And this class society gave rise to the organized religions. It is believed that this patriarchy actually directly descended from this organized religions. These organized religions took complete control over women through monogamy or polygamy, which means only men can have multiple women partners. And it is completely opposite to what used to happen previously. Previously, there was a common practice of polyandry and polygamy, which means both male and female could have multiple partners, and that indicates the sexual equality. But later on, as the religion came, it slowly introduced gender differentiation in the culture and society. And if we look at the world's top 5 religions, it will be more clear, because one common thing is there, which is the patriarchy. Now, if we again look back at the time before the beginning of agriculture, many anthropological studies suggest that at that time, the ancient tribes, for example, you might have heard about Kalahari tribes or Mashko-Piro tribes. They used to practice the matrilinearity, which means everyone's identity was linked to their mother only. And that is because of a special biological phenomena called the concealed ovulation. If I make it more clear, you will understand that it was like every child was who the mother is, it is more clearly understood, but the father, it was not so clear, especially in a society where polyandry and polygamy was a common practice. So women took the advantage of this, and they used to get the support from multiple men for the care they needed for themselves and their children. And it is believed that this is how the woman domesticated the men, and at the same time, at that time, every child was linked to their mother's identity. So throughout this discussion, I hope I could convince you that patriarchy is not natural. It is not linked to any human evolution. Actually, in fact, it is against the evolutionary process, and it should be ended. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So after listening to Dr. Majumdar's discussion that male dominance is unnatural, let me please invite Ms. Sakshi to discuss the issue of male dominance in the form of masculinity and its problems.
गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन, माय नेम इज़ साक्षी और आज मैं मैस्कुलिनिटी के सबसे बड़े प्रॉब्लमेटिक एस्पेक्ट एंग्शियस मैस्कुलिनिटी पे डिस्कस करने वाली हूँ. सो एंग्शियस मैस्कुलिनिटी होता क्या है? इट्स एंजाइटी ऑफ मेन टू प्रोटेक्ट द वुमेन ऑफ देयर कम्युनिटी, ऑफ देयर फैमिलीज. उन्हें प्रोटेक्ट करना किससे है? टू प्रोटेक्ट देम फ्रॉम द मेन ऑफ अदर कम्युनिटी. एंड यहीं पे सबसे बड़ी हिपोक्रेसी होती है. हिपोक्रेसी ये कि वाइल ग्रोइंग अप हो सकता है उन्होंने अपनी फैमिली में, अपनी कम्युनिटी में ही कोई सेक्सुअल वायलेंस या मोलेस्टेशन फेस करा हो, बट वो चीज़ें रिपोर्ट नहीं होती. बट इफ़ शी वॉन्ट्स टू मैरी समवन हु इज़ नॉट फ्रॉम देयर कास्ट, देयर कम्युनिटी, उस केसेस में बड़ा इशू क्रिएट होता है और उनकी फैमिलीज से जो भी हो सारे वो मेजर्स लिए जाते हैं उन्हें रोकने के लिए. एंड अगर स्टैटिस्टिक्स की देखी जाए तो जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ पुलिस केसेस रिपोर्ट होते हैं उसमें जितने भी ये मोलेस्टेशंस और सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट की जो क्राइम्स हैं उसमें जो क्रिमिनल है वो मोस्टली या तो कोई क्लोज रिलेटिव होता है या तो कोई क्लोज फ्रेंड होता है. और दीज थिंग्स गो अननोटिस्ड बिकॉज विमेंस आर नॉट अलाउड टू स्पीक अबाउट देम. उन्हें सप्रेस किया जाता है इन सब चीज़ों के लिए. और इंडिया में अगर देखा जाए तो मोस्टली जो फैमिली का ऑनर है उससे विमेन के ऑनर से रिलेट करते हैं कि अगर कुछ भी विमेन को होता है तो उससे फैमिली की रेपुटेशन और स्टेटस पे अफेक्ट होता है. तो उसे उन चीज़ों को करने के लिए हम हर तरीके से रोका जाता है. देयर आर खाप पंचायत जहाँ पे मोस्टली जो केसेस आते हैं वो अगर कोई इफ़ समवन हु इज़ नॉट फॉलोइंग देयर कम्युनल नॉर्म्स एंड इज़ गोइंग अगेंस्ट देम, तो दे आर थ्रेटेंड, दे किल्ड और दे आर फोर्स्ड टू कमिट सुसाइड जस्ट टू सेव द ऑनर. एंड ऐसा ऑनर किसका का जिसमें लाइक आपको लोगों को मारना पड़ रहा है. लाइक वाई टू किल पीपल टू सेव द ऑनर ऑफ योर फैमिली? आपने वो ऑनर लड़की को दिया ही क्यों है? मीन दे आर बॉयज़ ऑल्सो. आप उनके एक्शंस को इग्नोर करते हो और अगर कुछ भी गलत होता है, कोई सेक्सुअल क्राइम होता है तो ये लाइक आपने कपड़े कैसे पहने थे, आपने ऐसा एक्ट करा, यू वर द वन हु ट्रिगर्ड देम. लाइक डज दैट मेक सेंस? Okay. And then there's a book by Urvashi Butalia, The Other Side of Silence, in which she has mentioned the honor killing of sick women by the men of their own families. और ये किया क्यों? रीज़न ये दिया because they wanted to protect their honor, their family honor. They wanted to protect their face. और and for that उन्हें कुआं में धक्का दे के like they were killed for this. And then they call killing is protection. Like killing is not the answer to anything ना. And ये जो anxious masculinity है ये patriarchy का part है. It is derived from patriarchy जहाँ पे ये believe किया जाता है कि a woman's body is a man's possession. A woman's body is a man's possession. कैसे? We have equal rights. और उस केस में आप ये बोल रहे हो कि जो women है वो men से कम है. And that's why I think it's a high time that we all should work on this arena, and we should learn from the mistakes, by the mistakes जो हमने पहले करी हुई है कि one thing that I want to say, the last, that a woman is not an object. She is not someone's asset. She is a human being and her choices should be respected.
Thank you so much, Sakshi, for so lively and beautifully explaining this evil, anxious, and hyper masculinity. So, due to sheer paucity of time, Dr. Veena could not discuss a moment that draws a link between the exploitation and degradation of the natural world and the subordination and oppression of women. Therefore, I request Dr. Kashif Hanif to kindly elaborate on it. Please, sir.
Good morning. Today I'll be talking a least heard aspect of feminism, that is the ecofeminism. We know that what the feminism stands for. Feminism actually talks that so far from the historical times, the male point of view has been given preference, and because of this male dominance, the women have oppressed and subjugated. But if the same ideology is extended to the nature, the same thing is happening with the nature also. Nature is being destroyed, nature is being exploited. In the same way, the females are being subjugated and oppressed. So, ecofeminism tries to see the exploitation of nature through the eyes of feminism. This is called the ecofeminism. This term was coined by this French writer Francoise Ebon, and she said that social injustice, gender equality, and climate change, these are interlinked, and they are the result of the male dominance and patriarchy, where the person or the man thinks that he has the power over others. So ecofeminism basically dwells on some points like oppression of the females, marginalized groups, women of color, is the result of the male dominance, is the result of the male patriarchy. And as a result of this, the women are the most sufferer of this thing. Because when the nature is destructed, then what happens? These are the women who suffer the most, because they are not that monetarily or financially sound. So they have to face the burn of the climate change. Like in the desert or in the hills, you can see that where the deforestation took place, the women had to go miles to collect the water. They had to go from one place to another place to collect the firewood. So women were becoming the sufferer of this climate change. So ecofeminism contends that we must replace this culture of male dominance by ethic of care. And they say, according to ecofeminists, they say that we must go back to the time when the society was matrilineal, like as we still see in case of the tribals or in the case of the hunter-gatherers, where the man and woman are on equal footing, and they use the nature for their needs, not for their greed. So they want to establish a kind of egalitarian society where women and men are equal. And so in nutshell, we can say that if we want to truly address this problem of climate change, we have to make women more stronger. And the example of this we can find in India. You must have heard the name of the Chipko movement. This movement was happened in the Uttarakhand region, and in the early 80s, and this movement was completely led by the women. So what happened that a large swaths of the forest area were given by the government to the contractors for development work, and the women and the tribals living in those areas were heavily dependent on the forest because of their livelihood. And so when all the litigation and other things failed to prevent the government from the deforestation of that area, and the contractor finally landed in those areas, so women of those areas, they have nothing to fight against those powerful contractors which were backed by the government machinery. So they came forward, and the least, I think that was the best example of the non-violence. They did nothing, they just embraced the trees. They embraced the trees, and they prevented the destruction of the forests. So this is the one of the example of in India. And another example that I can give, that where the women have shown the way how we can fight the climate change. And I think you must have heard the name of Wangari Maathai. She is the Nobel Prize winner, and from Kenya. The same thing was happening there also. There was large deforestation, and the women were the worst sufferer of that. They were bearing the brunt of that deforestation. So Wangari, she suggested that each village, I think India must also emulate this model. Each village should be, its border of the village should be lined by 1,000 trees. So she went on her campaign, and each village of the Kenya was lined by these 1,000 trees, and that's drastically reduced the deforestation and climate change. So in nutshell, I would say that we have to change the view of seeing the climate change. The climate change is not taking place due to the industry or other things, but it is a kind of the patriarchal society. So if we want to address the problem of this climate change, then we have to also address this patriarchy and male dominance that wants to have power on others, including nature. So we have to address both patriarchy to address this issue of the climate change. Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us and telling us what ecofeminism is. So Dr. Veena concluded her speech by calling for debunking of patriarchy. For this, it is important to recognize the vertical organizational bureaucracies that buttress the ideology of patriarchy. So I now invite Ms. Shefali to share her thoughts on it.
Good noon, everyone. I'm Shefali, and I'm here to throw some light on the topic of bureaucracy and the word which I've heard it so many times, especially today, that is patriarchy. So I'll start with a quote that coming together is the beginning, keeping together is the progress, and working together is success. So then defining bureaucracy, I think we all must be knowing it. Bureaucracy is a formal system of administration and management. And it is specifically characterized by the hierarchy it holds, and it has its specific set of rules and regulation and division of labor. Patriarchy, we all must be knowing it, but still I would like to define it. It's a formal system. It's a societal system in which men hold, I would say, primary power in society. Okay, so how this bureaucracy and patriarchy is related? I think they both have this common ground that they both have hierarchy and they have control, and I think both are unelected. So if we talk about bureaucratic institutions, they have this centralization of power in that the top bureaucrats, we say the people at the top are making policies, making rules for the society. And in patriarchal system, also the one who is at the, we can say, at the hierarchical top, that is the men, they are making or taking decision for the society. So if we talk about various bureaucratic institutions, for example, any government, military, or any law-abiding institutions, they mainly are, we can say they are massively male-dominated, especially as far as now. And they have been making decisions for the society for so long, and they are sort of enforcing their laws on our society. So I think the next thing that we should talk about is, I think, the power. I think when authority is total, so too is the madness who declares it. and the potential for abuse and power starts. So this discrimination, the root cause of all the discrimination, I think, is the power that lies in whatever hands, and sort of that exploitation starts from there. And this both bureaucracy and patriarchy are supporting each other. Like how? Like if we talk about bureaucratic institutions are male dominated, so bureaucracy has patriarchy in them. And patriarchy, to sustain itself, it is also dependent on the bureaucracy. Like how? Like all the bureaucrats, we can say they are, like not all, but bureaucracy is sort of designing, enforcing such laws. They are discriminating women in way, we can say, in not promoting them, not hiring them. So that way it is creating a disbalance to the society. To, for example, I would say, I think if we talk about science also, in our PhD field also, I don't know, it's not, CDRI is a fine institute, but I think in many IITs and CSIR, still many of the faculties, they are sort of, I would say, skeptic or afraid to take female students in. Similar thing happens in any of the top positions or where the women are given leadership role. The patriarch think that these roles should not be given to women because it's like they will not be able to justify these roles because they have this extra responsibility of taking care of the family. So for this, I have to say that, is the taking care of the family only the responsibility of women? Or if at all women are doing it, I think this should be looked upon with respect, as this is a job of nurturing the society, maintaining the society, and taking care of the future generation of the society. So I think it should deserve respect, and it should be looked upon as a very important job and not just as a menial job which requires no-brainer. And other way the bureaucracy is supporting patriarchy is, like I would say, by not taking any action or by not enforcing laws, for example, that where a bureaucracy fails or bureaucratic inefficiency. Like for example, when any gender-based violence occurs, for example, honor killing is there, or any other thing, like female feticide. It is there in India for so long, but I think it is still not eradicated. So I would say somewhere or the other, our bureaucratic system has failed. They failed to protect the society as a whole. But I would say we need to debunk this patriarchy in the bureaucratic system and focus on not creating gender-based power structures, rather to create a society where each gender, whether being male, female, or in fact I would say other, have freedom to express and excel. Thank you.
Thank you, Shefali, for dewiring this linkage and dissecting it nice and clean for it. Definitely, bureaucracy and patriarchy run in a feed-forward loop and they go hand in hand. So I saw a quote by Maria Mais in one of the posters saying, if patriarchy had a specific beginning in the history, it can also have an end. यदि इतिहास में पितृसत्ता की एक विशिष्ट शुरुआत थी, तो इसका अंत भी हो सकता है. I now invite Ms. Rashmi Rathore to share her thoughts on how to go about eradicating patriarchy. Ms. Rashmi.
Respected director ma'am and dear friends, मैं इस टॉपिक को कहना चाहूँगी कि पैट्रियार्की फेमिनिज्म कैसे रिप्लेस कर सकता है पैट्रियार्की को एज अ वे ऑफ लाइफ, क्योंकि पैट्रियार्की जो है इतना वाइडली प्रैक्टिस हो रहा है कि हम भी कहीं ना कहीं थोड़ा बहुत कर जाते हैं, हमें खुद नहीं पता होता है कि हम उसको कहाँ प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, इतना ज़्यादा वो हमारे सिस्टम में समा गया है. तो जैसे कि पैनलिस्ट ने बताया कि पैट्रियार्की क्यों आया, क्योंकि पैट्रियार्की आने का एक रीज़न था अंडर द गार्ब ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन, गिविंग प्रोटेक्शन टू वुमेन. लेकिन आज ऐसा क्या हो गया है कि अचानक से सबको लग रहा है कि पैट्रियार्की बुरी चीज़ है और फेमिनिज्म आना चाहिए, इक्वालिटी होना चाहिए. अचानक से क्या मतलब पैट्रियार्क्स को दया आ गई कि सब कुछ चेंज होना चाहिए? ऐसा नहीं है, कुछ भी फ्री नहीं मिलता है. तो आज हमारा समय है, वो कैसे है? क्योंकि देखिए आज क्या सब कुछ जो डेवलपमेंट है सब कुछ इकोनॉमी है. कोई भी देश एक सुपर पावर तो क्यों है? इकोनॉमी के बूते है. भाई अगर यूएस है तो यूएस की इकोनॉमी इतना अच्छा है कि वो वर्ल्ड पावर बन गया। अब चाइना ग्रो कर रहा है, क्यों? क्योंकि वो वर्ल्ड पावर है। तो हमें भी अगर वर्ल्ड पावर बनना है तो हमारी जो इकोनॉमी है वो ग्रो करना चाहिए। और इकोनॉमी कैसे ग्रो करेगी? अगर आपकी 50% जनता है वो किचन में खाना बनाती रहेगी तो नहीं ग्रो करेगी, वहीं बैठे रहेंगे आप, नहीं ग्रो करेगी। तो इसलिए पैट्रियार्की को रिप्लेस करना है फेमिनिज्म से। और फेमिनिज्म, अब जब इकोनॉमी की बात आई है तो ऑब्वियसली सबसे पहले जो है वो इकोनॉमिक अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ है वुमेन को, वो मिलना चाहिए। तो हमारे इकोनॉमिक पार्टिसिपेशन कैसे होगा? इकोनॉमिक पार्टिसिपेशन के लिए एजुकेशन अच्छा होना चाहिए। भाई चाइल्ड को, गर्ल को एजुकेशन दे रहे हैं तो सिर्फ इसलिए नहीं देंगे कि हाँ उसकी शादी कर देनी है। शादी करने के लिए एक अलग टाइप ऑफ एजुकेशन होता है, और आपको जो एक आपका दिमाग खुलना चाहिए, और जो आप एक समझदार इंसान बनते हैं। अपना करियर हम जो अचीव करना चाहते हैं, हमारा जो दिमाग कहता है हमें जो अचीव करना है, उसके लिए एक डिफरेंट एजुकेशन है। तो वो एजुकेशन मिलनी चाहिए। और वो एजुकेशन जो है वो कैसे मिलेगी? मतलब एजुकेशन के लिए क्या रिफॉर्म्स होने चाहिए, कैसे एजुकेशन मिलेगी? तो पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म्स होने चाहिए। पॉलिसी जो मेकर्स हैं, पॉलिसी मेकर्स को उस तरह की पॉलिसीज़ लानी चाहिए। अब पॉलिसी कैसे बनेगी? आप देखिए कि पॉलिसी मेकिंग में जितना भी पॉलिटिशियन मान लीजिए, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में ब्यूरोक्रेसी है और जुडिशरी है, ये हमारे तीनों ब्रांच हैं। और इसमें जो वुमेन का जो पार्टिसिपेशन है वो 8 to 14-15% के अराउंड है। इतना ही पार्टिसिपेशन है। मतलब जो वुमेन के लिए पॉलिसी बन रही है वो भी मेल बनाएंगे। तो पॉलिसी कैसे, हमें जेंडर सेंसिटिव पॉलिसी कैसे बनेगी? भाई हम तो अपने लिए पॉलिसी ही नहीं बना रहे हैं, हम तो दूसरे की जो पॉलिसी बनाई हुई है उसको बस इम्प्लीमेंट भी कोई और कर रहा है। तो ये सब के लिए पूरा जो चेंज है, चेंज कहाँ आना चाहिए? सोशल चेंज आना चाहिए। तो सोशल चेंज किस तरीके से आ सकता है? 2 तरीके हैं उसके। एक तो सोशल चेंज जैसे है कि पॉलिसी बनी, भाई यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड आना चाहिए, रिजर्वेशन होना चाहिए वुमेन का, और जैसे कि जो रूढ़ियाँ ख़त्म होनी चाहिए। जो हमारा रिलीजन जिसके अंडर जो पैट्रियार्की जो अपनी पावर कहाँ से डिराइव करती है, मिसयूज़ ऑफ रिलीजन, मिसयूज़ ऑफ रिलीजन है। आप ये देखिए कि यूएस एक इतना डेवलप्ड देश है जो हमसे बहुत आगे है, लेकिन वहाँ पे इतने रिग्रेसिव अबॉर्शन लॉज है। क्यों? क्योंकि वहाँ पे मेजॉरिटी ऑफ पॉपुलेशन है क्रिश्चियनिटी फॉलो करती है, और क्रिश्चियनिटी में सिन है अबॉर्शन। तो इसीलिए वहाँ पे इतना रिग्रेसिव लॉज है। तो जो रिफॉर्म है वो एक रिलीजन का फेमिनिस्ट इंटरप्रिटेशन होना चाहिए। फेमिनिस्ट इंटरप्रिटेशन कि हमारे रिलीजन में मतलब बहुत सारे रिलीजन्स में कहते हैं, हमारी सोसाइटी कहती है यत्र नार्यस्तु पूज्यते रमन्ते तत्र देवता। जहाँ पे नारी की पूजा की जाती है वहाँ देवताओं का वास होता है। लेकिन एक्चुअल में क्या है? एक्चुअलिटी देखिए, एक्चुअल में क्या है? एक्चुअल में हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को लॉन्च करना पड़ता है बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ। मतलब कुछ ऐसा भी है कि बेटी को बचाना पड़ रहा है। मतलब पढ़ाएंगे बाद में, वालों से बचा तो लें, उसको सेव करिए पहले। तो ये मतलब ये सारे इश्यूज हैं। तो रिलीजन दूसरे देशों में और भी देशों में भाई शरिया लॉज, आपको एंटी हिजाब मूवमेंट, और अफगानिस्तान में इतने इश्यूज आ रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि ऐसा एक कोई सिस्टम होना चाहिए, सिस्टम बनाना चाहिए कि जो रिलीजन है, रिलीजन का पॉजिटिव इंटरप्रिटेशन, फेमिनिस्ट इंटरप्रिटेशन। बहुत सारे रिलीजन्स में बहुत अच्छी बात है वुमेन के लिए। हिंदुइज्म में भाई आप नवदुर्गा, आप 9 दिनों पूरे जो देवी के रूप है, आप नारी के अलग अलग रूपों की पूजा करता है। इतना मॉडर्न आउटलुक होना चाहिए। और इसके बाद फिर सोशल रिफॉर्म की जो बात आती है, तो सोशल रिफॉर्म में जो हमारा रोल आता है, यहाँ पे जितने भी लोग बैठे हुए हैं, मुझे पता है इनकी फैमिलीज़ सपोर्ट करती है, दे आर फेमिनिस्ट। इनकी फैमिलीज़ जो है सपोर्टिव ऑफ दिस वुमेन एजुकेशन और करियर है। तो हमारा यहाँ पे एक रोल है। हमारा क्या रोल है कि हम अपने जो राइट्स हैं, फेमिनिज्म जो है इसको समझे, पैट्रियार्की क्या है इसको समझे और अपनी फैमिलीज़ में उसको डिस्कस करें। और हम में से हर कोई किसी न किसी के लिए रोल मॉडल है। भाई हमारे अगर हम अपने घर में है तो हमारी मेड आती है, हम उसके लिए रोल मॉडल है। वो हमको देखेगी ये क्या कर रहे हैं, अपनी बेटी के साथ ऐसे कर रहे हैं, ये ऐसे करते हैं, कुछ देखेगी, हम उसके साथ कभी डिस्कस करते हैं। ऐसे इन सब चीज़ों को डिस्कस करिए। और समाज में कभी भी कोई रिग्रेसिव बात कही जा रही है, कोई डॉगमा बोला जा रहा है, तो उसको ना आप वहीं पर बोलिए, विरोध करिए। मतलब एक खुदा एक्टिव सिटीजन बनिए कि आपको हर यहाँ पे हर आदमी को, सबको पार्टिसिपेट करना है। ये जो रूट है ना, ये बहुत इसको डिफ़िकल्ट है, लेकिन आज का जो मूवमेंट है ये एक अपॉर्चुन मूवमेंट है, ये हमारी तरफ है। तो इसके दूसरा, यहाँ पे जितने भी लोग हैं सारे वुमेन जो है प्रोफेशनल्स हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि जो पैट्रियार्की के लिए स्लो पॉइजन है ना, वो इंटेलेक्चुअल वुमेन है। कि इंटेलेक्चुअल वुमेन स्लो पॉइजन, आप इतना अपने जॉब को इतना अच्छा करिए ना कि पेट्रास को लगे कि नहीं नहीं ये तो वुमेन है, ये इतना अच्छा कर रही है, मतलब उनको तो दिमाग में रहे ये तो इनके लिए कुछ गलत कहा जाता था कि लड़की ये नहीं कर सकती वो नहीं कर सकती। ये इंटेलेक्चुअल जो वुमेन अपने जॉब को बी अ डैम गुड प्रोफेशनल, जब आप प्रोफेशन में हैं तो बी अ डैम गुड प्रोफेशनल। तो इसके और हाँ, जैसे ब्यूरोक्रेसी की बात हुई तो ब्यूरोक्रेसी के लिए मैं कहना चाहती हूँ कि हमारे यहाँ जो गवर्नमेंट जॉब है, मुझे लगता है कि इंडिया में जो गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम है ये बहुत इक्वलाइजर है। यहाँ पे वुमेन को इक्वल राइट्स है, आपको सीसीएल है, मैटरनिटी लीव है, और आपके बहुत पूरा सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट लॉ है, इतना राइट है वुमेन, इतना सेफ मैंने प्राइवेट सेक्टर में तो वुमेन को नहीं देखा, इतना सेफ्टी वुमेन को यहाँ पे है। और इसके बाद हमारे जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स ने है एक डॉक्यूमेंट बनाया कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, जिसमें फंडामेंटल राइट्स दिए। फंडामेंटल राइट्स जो ब्यूरोक्रेट्स बैक्ड बाय ब्यूरोक्रेट्स और हमारे जो विजनरी जो लीडर्स थे उन्होंने इतना ग्रेट डॉक्यूमेंट बनाया जिसमें वुमेन को इतने राइट्स दिए, और फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं, सारे राइट्स उनको एंजॉय करना चाहिए। तो ये एक अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा डॉक्यूमेंट है, चेंज है। और इसी के साथ मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि ऐसा कहा जाता है कि जो 21st सेंचुरी है वो एशिया की सेंचुरी है। एशिया की जो पॉपुलेशन है वो 4.7 बिलियन है, तो इसका मतलब ये भी है कि ये 2.5 बिलियन जो वुमेन है उनकी सेंचुरी है। तो हमें ये रियलाइज़ करना है और हमें ये अपॉर्चुनिटी जाने नहीं देना है। और इसी के साथ मैं सबको यहाँ पे ऑल द बेस्ट बोलती हूँ और जय हिंद।
Thank you so much, Ms. Rashmi. That was very effective, very thought-provoking. Thank you so much for stating it very loud and clear that patriarchy ki ab nahi chalegi. The change must begin now and it has to come now. Thank you so much. Moving ahead, we heard Ms. Poonam's talk on the birth of the pill and how contraception unfettered women. We also heard about the adverse effects of hormonal contraceptions on the health of women. Therefore, I now invite Dr. Rajesh Jha to shed more light on the contraceptive research which has been done in CDRI so far. Please, sir.
Namaskar, good afternoon. Thanks, Muktadas. First of all, happy Women's Day to all and also celebration as well. And I would like to thank Dr. Navid Chattopadhyay for orchestrating this event and Dr. Raita Rangarajan for supporting this event. I wish to flashback a couple of stories about supporting women's health, and I think India is leading ahead because there are two major revolutionary changes taken place. The first is the XCG vaccines by Dr. Talwar, and then other one happened to be a pill by our own institute, Dr. Nityanand, and both of them won national accolades. One got Padma Bhushan, other one got Padma Shri. So how this happened, I wish to just share my opinion. During 1951, Karls and his group, who happened to be Bulgarian, Austrian, as well as American chemist, organic, and he developed one pill, which is the first pill for women, and he is known to be a father of the pill, and which happened to be coinciding with our Indian post-independence development at ministry level. And the first structured program was developed of Ministry of Health in 1952, subsequently, of this pill development. I'm not sure whether this is coinciding or maybe it's just phenomena. And way back 1960, subsequently, WHO had meeting with government of India, and they wanted to have this family programming of India itself. So WHO wrote to government India, and then subsequent Dr. Nityanand was approached, and Dr. A.B. Carr was given delegations to take care of this matter. So that time, then Dr. Nityanand and team, chemists as well as biologists, because Dr. Carr happened to be the endocrinologist that time as your departmental head. So 1960, the story begins of this pill, and during this time frame, as Poonam had mentioned that the US FDA has approved one Innovate pill which happened to be more hormonal ones, but that had a lot of severe effects noticed, which is obviously not good to take routinely, nausea, dizziness, so on, so things. So Dr. Nathan team decided not to work on any hormonal pills, which is leading to all these problems and affecting the endocrine axis. And meantime, Dr. Lerner Grove has in 1958 he made some anti-estrogen, which is totally devoid of hormonal action, and that was MER25. That led to the scaffold generations at CDRI, and that gave the boost to Nathan's teams. And there were several analogs developed, which happened to be the coumarins and naphthopherons, chromines, and then led to chromine. And during this time frame, the 20th compound of the series happened to be the potent one in 1967. So the name was given initially 67 and 28, which later on became centrocomin because it was discovered in CDRI. So they picked up the scent of CDRI, and the chromine is the compound name. That way the name derived centrocomin. And when WHO was discussing this matter, so they have given the name as per the international nomenclature, homoloxifene. And this compound was developed as a Y regulatory as per that time DCGI, Drugs and Cosmetics Act of India. And the journey begins that onwards. So the compound showed very potent efficacy of contraceptions in various laboratory animals, rodents, so on so. And it led to 1 year. So that means we reached to 968. And subsequently, we taken up to develop for preclinical regulatory toxicity in animals, which again took around 2.5 years. That time we already have the given name pentrochromine, and the trials began where clinical trial first taken place. And in 1971, this trial initiated, and 1972, in a year, it had been completed as a human safety trial first. After that, we need to check also for the toxicity, because if there's any other issues, we have to rule out the possibility. So all this mutagenic, carcinogenic, and other things have been taken care in various lab animals, including mice. And we got the proof of concept to develop it. It took around 5 years. So it happened to be the longest, possibly one of the longest studies for the centrochromin development. And in phase second, the B clinical trial, the dose was confirmed, because we need to have the doses. So I mean, happened to be 6 years down the line, and happened to be in 1983. So we have this dose confirmation. Now, again, there's some questions left, because doses have to be also optimized as per the regime of consumption. So in CDRI, I mean, in Ministry of Health and Welfare, they happen to be the leading ones to support the program from the beginning, 1968. So we had multi-centric trials at Lucknow and also other places, which took around 4 years to drive the dose of 30 mg weekly dose. And then the dose was subsequently followed for 13 months to check it. And in around 2 years time frame, 1989, we came this dose at 30 mg per week point of view. And then after having this thorough studies of the drug, the DCI happened to be approached in 1990, and within 1 year, they approved this drug. So initially, it was licensed to our Indian government, supported program HLL, which is now used to be Latex Limited, but now it's Life Care. So they launched. I mean, they taken this drug in 1991, and the first was introduced in Delhi in 1991. Subsequently, year 1992, they have introduced in India as a commercial level, which happened to be a name of Saheli, Choice 7, Centrons, and the companies which happened to be producing this drug was the Torrent, definitely HLL, and also the other companies in Peru as well, but I will come up with that subsequently. So the Ministry of Health, since they happen to be monitoring this development very closely, so they have taken this in social marketing by 1995, because they wanted to have very large data. So around, if you can guess, it is around 1 lakh women's data they have collected. and it happened to be the cycle-wise because typically, as we mentioned, that the cycle is very important of female to be respected. So they wanted to have data collectively. So they have huge data, and then it took around 5 years to collect data to be finally given to social marketing to government. And this happened to be the Saheli given 1995. And in parallel, subsequent development took place where 2008 Peru also adopted this drug as Ibifem. Somehow they could not go ahead, and then other development took place because this has one of the very good advantage that it can help the patient to have anemia. So the anemic patient, if it consumed, they can get rid of these problems of iron deficiency or loss. So Tatkal was launched, but because of some operational modes have been to be stopped by 13, 14. And then again it was reapproached because of discussions of Dr. Nityanand with the government that time. So it was introduced by Dr. Nadda, that time our health minister, and it was given a national family planning program, which happened to be a choice of basket program. So NHM, all these bodies comes in picture, and they are providing to the ASHA workers. ASHA NGOs are there, and also the Anganwadi workers. So they have this program going on. It's free of cost, available to all these centers, including the tertiary centers. And these teams, I wish that I could know all of them, but I'm missing some of them. But the notable ones are Nityanand in this team, Suprabhat Ray, who happened to be the first person to take this drug as his own PhD. And there are several notable ones. I think MM Singh is known to many of us because he still have activity going on. Dr. Sethi and Dr. Kambos, obviously, there are many other people. And for clinical safety and other study, Dr. Nityanand, better half, was the force to lead. And I got to know from that he never to sleep in night time. He will be walking to always to lab and seeing what is happening. Very fascinating journey of this development. And we have things also going on. So Dr. Our director is there, Rangarajan. She is having this drive on, and we are hoping that with CIPLA we will have something much better and maybe more respecting ones to deliver it. So with this, I would like to thank everyone to patiently hearing me, and have the wonderful event ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. What a wonderful day to discuss Saheli. So before we open the house for discussion and questions, I'll quickly summarize the points which have been put forward in today's discussion. So Dr. Nilanjana talked about how male dominance with all its ubiquity is surprisingly recent. There is compelling evidence that humans have probably evolved as egalitarian species and remain that way for hundreds and thousands of years. Sakshi discussed about the ingrained bedrock notions of being a man and boys don't cry that eventually lead to misguided, hyper and anxious masculinity. Dr. Kashyap pointed towards a number of connections between the oppression of women and nature that are significant to understand why the environment is a feminist issue, and conversely why feminist issues can be addressed in terms of environment concerns. Ms. Shefali told us about how our culture is oppressive patriarchy and how the bureaucrats don't wish to admit that the current hierarchy is not predicated on competence. Rashmi told us about how to debunk patriarchy. Dr. Rajesh Jha vividly walked us through the discovery of Centroman and how it revolutionized contraception, giving women the freedom to decide about pregnancy. With this, I now declare the house open for questions and discussions. If anybody wishes to add something to the ongoing discussion, please raise your hands and we'll get the mic to you. I would request you to not add any personal anecdotes. So if you want to add something to the ongoing discussion, you are free to do that. So there's a hand there. Can somebody please pass the mic to this? Asha, you have the mic. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are perfectly audible, yeah.
So that was a nice discussion and thought-provoking as well as the informative one. There was somewhere in the discussion that religions bring patriarchy. There was some just like that. So I can't agree with this anymore, being a supporter of women's rights, a strong supporter of this. So I would like to add this thing, and I would like to cite an example of this. We have two developed nations in the West. The one is the United Kingdom and the other one is the United States. We all know about that. So the United Kingdom, the religion, the Christianity is well deep rooted in their structure, and in the United States we all know the religion is no more a part of their system except for the Christmas holidays. So in the United Kingdom, since the 5 centuries, there have been the female monarchs, 6 female monarchs, and they have been well appreciated. They have been welcomed there, and their era has been known as the great eras, like Victorian era and two Elizabethan eras. And they also gave head of the government. The one was a Margaret Thatcher, second one was a Theresa May, and the Margaret Thatcher that was well uh, known for its economic development reason, whereas the United States, it could not any president of their own country, and we all know they believe in the religion as well, and there have been many feminism movement, and they could not give even one president and a vice president, and this time they gave the vice president, but it was like non-white president. First thing was that, and the second thing, nobody discussed the role of Indian women in bringing down the patriarchy in this discussion. So we were expecting that. The role of Ms. Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, role of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, role of Indira Gandhi. At the time she became the prime minister, she was called that she is the Gungi Gudiya, but she ruled for 15 years. Until the date, as I said, the US could not give any president, and we have given that. There was Sultana Razia, Sultan Malik Izzuddin Razia, this was her title and name. So she brought down the patriarchy at her time. She fought with her brothers and half brothers and the courtiers, and she ruled for
We
2 or 3
have to
years.
keep the sheer paucity of time in mind with us. So
That was the discussion that I wanted to say, that in the previous times, there were more better reasons, there were more better examples how to bring down the patriarchy, except for the radical feminism which is being followed in the United States, and those who say the religions bring the patriarchy. So
thank you so
that
much,
was
sir,
my
for
point.
adding your views. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. We'll keep it very quick and precise. Yeah, I mean, please, yeah. Please state your points very concisely.
So only point I want to make that CDRI has contributed its role by developing a pill like Saheli, and we have a big reason to celebrate that in many terms and many ways. So I wish we should, as CDRI, should celebrate Saheli and its role in overall development of country and overall upliftment of women. Thank you.
That was a well-made point, sir. So we have a question at the back. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we had this one last question, and Dr.
Thought, I mean, open to everyone. And we discussed a lot about the female contraception. And it's not only in India, worldwide I'm talking. Male contraception is far easier to develop, but males don't accept it. So it's an open question to all. And how many males are ready to accept it? We are ready to develop it.
I mean, yeah, the question is loud and clear. So with this, thank you so much. We close the house. We have a question at the back. Yeah. Thank you so much for being such an engaging audience. So
एक्चुअली मैं थोड़ा सा आपको आंसर करना चाहती हूँ. आज आपने जो रिलीजन की बात की ना, एक्चुअली आपको थोड़ा सा एक ब्रॉड पर्सपेक्टिव देखना चाहिए. आपने यूएस और यूके का एग्जांपल दिया है ना, दोनों जगह क्रिश्चियनिटी है, लेकिन ये नहीं देखा कि वुमन वहाँ पे रूल कर रही है. वहाँ पे मिसयूज नहीं हो सकता है ना, वहाँ पे तो वुमन ऑलरेडी रूल कर रही है. और दूसरी चीज़ देखिए, आपने सिर्फ 2 जो नेशंस है वो देखे, बाकी अफगानिस्तान देखिए, शरिया लॉ देखिए क्या हो रहा है, और बाकी आप ईरान देखिए, पूरा इन टोटो देखिए. सेपरेशन में मतलब बस देखिए, होलिस्टिक पिक्चर देखिए.
thank you so much. So that was a very lively, brief, reasonable, and a substantial panel discussion. I thank all the panelists for sharing their thoughts with us. kindly take your positions in the audiences. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you. So with this, I sign off from here and hand over the stage back to the original anchor, Mr. Karthik. I request you all to please stay back for the final comments, please.
Now I invite Director Dr. Radha Rangarajan for giving her remarks. Welcome, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very happy Women's Day to all of you, not just to the women, but to the men as well. Everyone sitting here in this audience has some relationship to a woman, either because you were born of a woman, you have a woman in your life as a wife, or a sister, or a daughter, or a friend, a colleague, whatever it may be. And today we are marking the notion that we stand here as equal partners in all that we do, and therefore, happy Women's Day to all of you. You know, I have been in many organizations in my life, and I also built one of my own. And every year when Women's Day came along, I looked around and I said, how are we marking Women's Day? Several years I have written, you know, about my experiences on Women's Day and had small discussions and so on and so forth. But somewhere I thought that the essence of Women's Day was really lost on people at large. Either people were throwing grand sales or giving women discount coupons, telling women how beautiful they are and telling women, oh, you're so special. And it really bothered me because that's not what Women's Day is about. Women's Day is really about recommitting to the idea that people are equal partners. Men and women are equal partners, and whether it's in the home or it's in the workplace, it's in society at large, or it is at the level of law. This is what the day is supposed to symbolize. And so sometime in February, I said, let's start to think about what we want to do on Women's Day. And so I asked for a committee. I nominated a few scientists to help conceive of the event, and that team consisted of Smriti Baduria, Amir Nazir, Amit Lahiri, Namrata Rastogi, Niti Kumar, and Naivedya Chattopadhyay. So this is the team that helped put this event. This is the team that worked on the Women's Day, on the Women's Day events. And when we met and discussed what we wanted to do, we finally then decided to do a 3-part marking of Women's Day. And so you can call it Women's Month or whatever you want to call it. 1st of March, we started with a candlelight walk. I don't know, some of you were there, some of you were probably not there. What was the significance of that? The darkness, evening and nighttime, so the darkness or the absence of light has always been a source of fear for women. All of us, I think, grew up with this, and perhaps as a parent, you tell your child, come back before it gets dark. Whether it was 6 p.m. in my time, but maybe it's 9 p.m. now, but we have an underlying fear of the dark. And so we said that we don't want to be afraid of the dark, and we don't want to hold ourselves back. So we did a candlelight walk through the campus, holding candles. And the theme was, of course, one of physical safety, but it was also about being safe overall in the workplace, and finding a way to be one's full self in the workplace as well as outside. The other part of it was that we look out for each other. So even if you feel very secure in yourself, even if you feel that you were never there was never any bias against you growing up or in the workplace or wherever else it is, look out for the others. Look out for people who are in vulnerable spaces and be there for them. So that was the message of the candlelight walk. Then the second event was a movie screening, which is of course part entertainment, but also partly, intended to provoke thought. And that was the movie Hidden Figures. I don't know how many of you saw it. That movie talks about these women who played critical roles in NASA, in predicting or in charting the course of a spaceship or satellite, the big projects that NASA was working on. They battled many, many barriers to prove themselves, to be heard, to find their place at the table. And it wasn't until much, much, much later, many decades later, that they were recognized. And that was not that long ago. Before some of my, before some of us conclude that, oh, everything happened in the very distant past. No, it's very recent, as Nilanjana also said. So, that was the objective of the second event. The third event, which was today, I think this was very special. This was put together with the efforts of many. And I think the documentary which was created and which we saw right at the beginning was very special. And it asked members of our own community what they thought about feminism, what they thought, whether they felt that feminism had a place in today's world, whether there should be more feminists or less, whether there was really, whether CDRI was a place where feminism was being practiced or whether it was even needed. I think the documentary was very well put together, and I want to thank all of the students and the team, the core team that organized, for creating something with a very special, distinct perspective. This is Anam, Sakshi, Anuradha, Trisha, Shreyanko, Akif, Kazim, and Ravindranath. Thank you very much for putting together a very, very, very well, it's sort of putting together a documentary that encapsulates a diversity of views. So I think we had two different things. We had the documentary in which largely people said that CDRI is a great place to work, and I'm happy to hear that. And CDRI is supportive. We have a safe, secure workspace. Of course, this is not representative of everybody, and we had a limitation on time. Therefore, a small number of representative voices were included. Then we had the panel we had a panel of speakers who talked about different aspects of women's rights, feminism, the history. So Nilanjana, Sakshi, Kashif, Shifali, Rajesh, and Rashmi. And we had Veena and Poonam give us a historical perspective on the feminist movement as well as the birth of the pill. And I don't know whether these are all very valid perspectives. They are individual perspectives. They speak from their own experience. And all of these experiences come together along with what you heard in the documentary to create what we have here, which is CDRI. We are a privileged lot. We have a lot going in our favor. We have the ability to speak, the ability to be heard. And the fact remains that this is a place where we practice science. So I want to just show you a few slides to give you a little bit of my perspective. So does gender really matter in science? I mean, almost everybody here probably will say, no, gender has no role in science. And why do we say that? Because as scientists, we are trained in a particular manner. And those of us, those from our supporting and, all of our other functions who work with the scientists, I include everybody in this conversation, that we are trained in a particular method, which is you ask a question, you frame a hypothesis, you design experiments, you look at the data, and you come to conclusions, right? This is the method that we're all familiar with. So if you're only going to look at the data and come to conclusions, I would argue that we should live in an utopian world where data speaks and that's all there is to it. But do we use our scientific training to address societal issues? And that's a very important question to ask ourselves, because when you look at the history of humankind, you will find that scientists were not necessarily the ones who fought for social justice, who fought to make a level playing field, who fought to get rights to those who were denied, right? So our critical and rational thinking and our powers of being able to be highly analytical don't necessarily translate, which means that we have to be mindful of bias. So this is DST data, 60,000 scientists in R&D. This is, I think, only limited to academia. 17% are women. But when you look at the numbers of women who are getting educated in the sciences, 43% receive a higher education in science. So this is masters and above, and they take 14% of STEM jobs. And when you look at the numbers, yes, in the biological sciences, we have a little bit higher representation than the others. The engineering sciences, it is not, out of the jobs, the 14% jobs, 9% is in the engineering sciences. So if you take biology, for instance, where we are at 43% or so, and you look at the numbers in the workplace, it is 26%. So there is something happening. Would you agree? Yeah. This is CSIR data. And what do we see in CSIR? We see, so when you go from left to right, so this is the senior most cadre, and this is the entry-level cadre for scientists. What you see is that at the chief scientist level, the percentage of women is dismal, under 10%. And as you go across at the scientist level, that is, the level at which recruitment happens, there you see the numbers are better, but still under 30%. And this is data for CDRI. What do you see? 1 woman chief scientist, 6 senior principal scientists, 4 principal scientists, 2 senior scientists, and 4 scientists. I'm sorry, this is data for the last, Anand, 20 years? For 10 years? Last year data, yeah, that's why the numbers are low. Yeah, that's why the numbers are low. Okay, so when you look at this, you see that the number of women is, this is where we are in terms of representation across the different levels. So this is the overall CDRI data, which is that when you look at administration, scientists and technical staff, we are still, looking at some pretty serious imbalances. Right. Okay. So we got to ask ourselves some questions. Where are the biases? And where do we start to address these biases? Right. And this is data for industry. I mean, I can tell you that in industry, again, the numbers are not anywhere close to. So by the way, DST is aspiring for a 30% representation of women in science. So that's where DST wants to go. When you look at the pharmaceutical industry, 11%. Let me give you one more statistic. In the IT industry, where again, like the biological sciences, the number of men and women who graduate with a degree in computer science is more or less equal, 50%. Since the early 1990s, the IT industry in India has been recruiting women. So guess what the NASSCOM numbers look like? They look as follows. At the entry level, the number of women entering the workforce in the IT and IT-enabled services is 50-50. As you get to the managerial positions, it is 25%. And as you get to the executive positions, it is 1%. Okay. Now, if you say that it will slowly change, my friends, let me also say this, that over 30 years, this hasn't changed, right? And over 30 years, we are still looking at a very, very imbalanced workforce, especially as you get to higher levels. So then we got to ask ourselves, what is happening at an individual level? And why are we looking at such numbers? And why should the numbers count? After all, a lot of people here at CDRI said that CDRI is very, very supportive environment. So I'll say this, that for those of us who are already at the table, that means that we are able to have this conversation, we are sitting at the table, we have a voice and we may be heard. Yes, this is a good place and we are doing well and we are able to meet our aspirations perhaps. But please think beyond this table at who is not able to come to the table. And we must therefore look at how we can bring these voices to the table and make them count. And also let me say that for those who are at the table, this is where equity comes in. It is not all the same experience for everyone. And so I'll say we must be mindful of bias. And we are taking initiatives. These are very, these are small things we are doing. I want to acknowledge the leadership role that Neeti plays in bringing the Gati, in implementing the Gati program in CDRI, which is, so CDRI is the only CSR institute which runs this program, and it is to promote gender equity. And the idea is to enable all stakeholders to achieve professional excellence. And we are doing small things, but I think they'll all add up in the end, such as on-campus family accommodation for married women students with children. We want to support these women because we see them as having to carry a higher burden. Upgradation of creche facilities. We ran a survey recently. And my friends, when I talk about, let's bring more people, to the table, it's also for community matters within CDRI. This survey was posted on the intranet, and of our, large, what are we, maybe 600 odd people, including students and so on, even more, 800, we got only 15 responses, right? And that is an example of what I say, that even, so those of us who are at the table and who don't need a creche, need to look to this as a way in which to bring more people to the table. And so these are institutional initiatives that matter, that count. Any woman who is at a point in her career when she is rearing to take off, and she also knows about her ticking biological clock, will relate to this. These are extremely unavoidable conflicts, but we have to make the situation, we have to make this conflict resolvable through institutional efforts. So we have creche, we have an upgradation program for the creche. We are intending to run more workshops on gender sensitization and run mental health workshops. We had a small start to this at the beginning of the year. And we will continue through the year with specific workshops addressing mental health challenges, in which we address more than, the idea is to talk about broad things which affect all members of our community, but where there are gender specific issues, pick those up as well. So if we are going to support women in in the workforce, then I think we need to build highly inclusive environments, understand skill gaps and offer training, invest in mentoring. So let the next generation not face the same hurdles that I faced. This is the philosophy that I carry close to my heart. And that's what, we all need to embrace, that let somebody not have to suffer the same thing that we did. Recognize, acknowledge, and celebrate. It's very, very important to give credit where it's due. Develop a strong work ethic of hard work and goal orientation. Develop empathy and understanding to enable a collaborative culture. This is at a community level, at an individual level. We all need to look for opportunities to grow, speak up against bias, and be sensitive to gender-specific challenges. So this is what I wanted to say to all of you, and I thank you all for sitting through almost an hour and almost 2 hours of this program. I want to, in the end, also thank the anchor, Karthik, and the moderator for the discussion, Muktada, for playing a vital role in today's program. And I want to finally thank you all for being extremely good, for being a great audience, and for being participants in CDRI's journey towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Finally, I invite Dr. Neeti Kumar for delivering the vote of thanks.
So thank you, Karthik. As we move towards the conclusion of the event, I think all of you would agree that this is not the end, but it's the beginning to have an open dialogue, to initiate a paradigm shift in our mindset, and to have willingness to work together, as our director has already mentioned, to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only at our workplace, but also recognize the gaps which we see in our homes, in our society, and also beyond. And on the behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank Dr. Radha Rangarajan for challenging the status quo, and also for seeking suggestions from the community to improve the work culture balance in the society as well as in CDRI. And I would like to remind you that we had launched, director had launched a e-suggestion portal on March 1. And this portal is open till 31st March. So we would like you all to please submit your suggestions. It will just take you 5 minutes, but we would get an idea how we all can work together to improve the work culture in our institute. And special thanks to Nabedya. He was the person behind the show, the writer, director, the action man. So as a committee member, we all really enjoyed interacting with him, and we learned a lot, and he also mentored the students for the presentations. And of course, there were a lot of volunteers on and off stage. They have been helping us from in organizing the events from March 1st till date. And before we leave for chai and samosa, I would like to just recite a few lines from Tagore's poem. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free and where the world has not been broken up by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from depth of truth, where the tireless striving stretches its arm up towards perfection. Thank you.